Welcome to the Elite Life Podcast with your hosts, Trisha and Kylee. Here, we guide you on a journey of personal and professional transformation, revealing the secrets to success. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, join us as we unlock the doors to the elite world of growth, grit, and grace. So, let's dive in.
Ready, set, go. Welcome, friends, to another episode of the Elite Life Podcast. We are so excited that you joined us today. I'm Trisha.
I'm Kylee.
Woohoo! Here we are.
Huzzah! Happy holidays, everybody. Today we have a really special, kind of interesting episode that I think everybody could pull at least one thing from. And today we're going to be talking about navigating family dynamics and holiday stress, because I feel like this is something everybody deals with. I don't care how well your family. Listen, our family gets along pretty well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm very tight with my mom. We're tight all around. All the Ricans are very tight, but there's still those situations that you run into, whether it's friends or family, where you're just like, eee! And you're trying to figure out how to navigate like a specific conversation or dealing with maybe someone's coming out of a hard patch in life and you're like, how do I deal with this? So today we want you to buckle in because we're going to walk you through some tips and tricks on how to make it through the holidays without pulling all of your hair out or going to prison.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's challenging because, everybody has their own personalities. And even though we're all family, like we're all living separate lives and those lives can look very different. And it also depends on the family too. Like when I look at the differences between like our side on my dad's side of the family and then like my mom's side, it's like it's night and day. So even though, you navigate this part of your family this way, the other part may be very different. And then when you bring in like in-laws, Dave's family is completely different from the other two. So it's almost like everywhere you go, you kind of got to put on a different hat. And they also all bring different sets of expectations.
Right.
And I think that that's something to really think about. Like, I kind of felt bad because we did Thanksgiving with my mom's family here and we were talking. And one of the things I said was like, the best thing about when Aunt Cindy and your mom and all the Apontes come over is like when the food is done, all the women go in and they clean up my whole kitchen and everything. And then I'm sitting there at Thanksgiving and I'm like cleaning it felt like hours. It probably wasn't hours. But then my sister came in to ask for help and I was like, oh no, I already got it. And then I'm like, dude, I'm a jerk. Like I just talked about how nice it is to have help. And then I was like, nah.
You and I share that problem. We have trouble asking for help. Absolutely. Yeah, I noticed that dynamic too as I got older. My dad's side of the family, we do Christmas Eve with them, so that's like the only time they ever get like real ruckus, but very quiet, kind of chill people. And then the Apontes is just like a free-for-all circus.
Yeah, but it's fun. But also, like we were saying, like different expectations, like on, Christmas is coming. This is going to be out in December. Christmas is coming. And like my mom's side, like we do gift exchange. Apontes, we never do gift exchanges,
right.
So it's very different with different pressures and expectations.
We just come together and eat.
Yeah, we just eat all the food, and maybe playing some games or something. And there's no wrong way. Like, I really want to start this episode by saying that. Like, there is no wrong way to do your holidays. And I think that is really important to keep in your mind moving forward with thinking about holidays or how to navigate these family pressures. Because sometimes if you did always grow up this way, and then maybe you do get married to someone whose family is very different, like, you got to take off like that. I don't want to say judgy, but like it's okay if it's different.
So one thing I've learned from my mom that has served me very well in my marriage is you can't have your expectations, because she's constantly telling me, she's like, you can't have the same expectations that you have for yourself. You cannot put those on Ryan. That's not very fair. And I feel like you can expand that to family as well. Yeah. So let's jump in and start by understanding, holiday stress and family dynamics and why the holidays can be so stressful in the first place. So like we're dealing with gift shopping, we're dealing with who's on first, where are we going on this day? And like you said, different expectations. Maybe when you go over here, you need to be dressed up, whereas when you show up to Trisha's, you in your pajamas, So let's talk about, how easy it is to fall into feeling like there's no time to even take a breath. Like that's step one of recognizing.
Right. And that's the thing, like, I say this often on the show, and I say this often in life, like that quote, everybody's doing the best they can with what they have. And
that has served me. That has gotten me through so many rough days, sis.
It is so helpful because, like, I've talked to Dave about this before. Like, every family has its own, like, unique dynamic. And sometimes there's old, like, wounds or situations or, like, we've talked about identities that may have changed. And when you come together and maybe, like, you only see each other on the holidays, those things can resurface. And it only takes, like, one thing that my brother says that puts me on this loop of like, well, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I've said to Dave before, like, I don't want to keep having the same conversations. Like, I don't want to keep telling the same old stories or talk about the same old things. Like, I want to talk about like what book you're reading or where are you traveling or how do you love your job? And it's really hard to change those family conversations.
It is, exactly. And sometimes, like you said, we feel like we have to play a specific role or, like Trisha said, meet specific expectations. So today we're going to help you guys understand, these dynamics. We're going to, like I said, give some tips and tricks on how to approach them with a clear mind and give you confidence in setting boundaries, because I feel like a lot of the stress comes from boundaries, right? Yeah. The one thing I love about my mother-in-law is she knows that we live at our house. And so I know a lot of women, when their mother-in-law pops by, they're just like, oh my God, the house is a mess and this and that. And then God bless Mary, she comes in my house and she's like, all right, I'm going to sit down and like hang out. Whereas my mom comes in and she looks around. She's like, I did not raise you this way. Oh. She says that. And then she helps me start cleaning, of course. So we're going to talk today about setting some boundaries, coming to it with a clear mind, and getting you in a place of feeling comfortable, because at the end of the day, these holidays are about joy and coming together and reconnecting, especially if you are encountering family that you don't see, that might be coming from far away. Or like Trisha said, like, even though we live in Michigan, Trisha and I, you grew up in Garden City and all of those places, and I was in Waterford and White Lake. So we literally only saw each other on like family event days.
Yeah. And I thought about that too, because like even my own mom, like we're getting to the point, because she lives in Garden City and now I live here. So it's like the same situation. I usually only see my mom like a handful of times a year because we are so far away. And even though she retired, like she goes, I retired so that I can now drive my grandkids around. Like she's driving them to work, she's driving them to school, she's down there doing a lot of stuff. So let's talk about what are boundaries, right? Like that's a word that gets thrown around a lot. And I don't know that like everybody really understands what it means to set boundaries. So like when you're talking about boundaries, for me, boundaries are about like knowing what you need to stay like emotionally safe and happy. Mm-hmm. And although some people will be like, oh, that's hippy dippy, hoo-wah-wah stuff, it's really important. Yes. Because like I know for myself, I was of like one of the first generations to start thinking about being emotionally safe. Like when I was raised, it was like, it was like you shove your feelings. And I was actually thinking about this last night. It's like, you shove your feelings down and you don't express your sadness or your anger or your emotions, like that. We don't have time for that because we were raised really poor. And so it's like your feelings don't matter. Like keep moving on. We got to keep trucking. We have bigger problems to handle. Like suck it up and let's go. I always think of that country and Western song that's like, what is it? She says like cut your bangs and don't go crazy. Or whatever,
not your mom's broken, not your mother's broken heart. Yeah, where her mom comes in and she's like, listen, you need to be a lady. You cannot go crazy. Yeah. Hide your crazy, fix your eyeliner, dot your T's, cross your I's. And it's very true. It's very true.
That is not the right way to handle things, because then what happens is this implosion, or you wake up, you become an adult that is not functioning in a mental health like good way, right? Like you're undoing all of this patchwork. But again, like going back to like everybody doing the best they can with what they have, right? Like that's how my mom was raised. So that's how she raised us. And it's not that it was bad or it was wrong. She was doing the best she had with what she had,
absolutely.
right? And we're all doing that. So when we talk about boundary setting in a family context, I love this because like having Dave, we started to have these conversations earlier in our marriage, where it's like how long you'll stay at the event. Okay, we're going to go to this Christmas event, but we're only going to stay till this time because by then the kids are going to be done. Like we're going to be spent. We're done making small talk. Or maybe you're talking about topics you're not going to talk about, right? Like, all right, we're going to go in here. And if this starts coming up, like let's pivot out of that conversation. Like I was just saying, I have these talks with Dave. Like, I don't want to talk about this person anymore. If you hear it go up, please help me to move the conversation. And like that's another boundary setting tool, right? Like we do with kids, like redirection. Okay. And I do this a lot in conversations with my family is like the redirection, like, okay, and now we're going to talk about nothing. Let's go play the board game of life. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's really smart. Ryan and I have to do this as well, especially when we go to like my family parties, because I will carry on. And especially because I don't get to visit, because we're so head down, we're grinding, we're so involved in like our little bubble of like, here's our family. Like I had to go in and drop some meds off for Casey in the school, and I saw another mom that I haven't seen in 1,000 years. And like, I love her to this. She was like, I love you. I'm like, we'll see each other after the holidays. We'll have a social life again. Because it's like brat, 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 brat from like October 1st until the end of the year. And so a lot of times, like when we go, I will look at Ryan and I will say, okay, like you just said, by 9:30, we're going to start rounding it up. We're going to be out of the house by 10. And he looks at me and he's like, yeah, right.
Well, and I think it's okay if you are having a good time, if that changes, just like check in with each other, you know, like checking in, like, how are you doing? Are you ready to go or are you having a good time? And if you're both having a good time, it's okay to readjust because sometimes all the things did fall into place and you're
having a fabulous time and you don't want to go.
Yeah, for sure.
So tip number 1 that we're going to talk about is we want to make sure that, decide ahead of time how you want the holidays to go. Decide ahead of time of exactly what you want to get out of it and how you want to be feeling, and maybe make a code word or something. So like if you're non-confrontational like me, and you're in a spot where like you're ready to leave and you look at your spouse and they're not ready, maybe you can look at them and be like, hey, we got to go home and let the dog out.
I use the dogs quite often.
Yes.
We got to get back to our dog.
And just talk about that ahead of time. But also, an exercise you can do is sit down and write down 3 intentions or 3 things that you want to get out of the holidays. So I will remain calm and avoid reactive conversations like Trisha just said, or I will prioritize my peace over opinions of me, or I will not talk about politics at Christmas parties.
I'll leave my tinfoil hat at home.
I will not wear the Trump sweater to Thanksgiving.
Dude, this is so on the side, but like I was getting my hair done and the girl's like, who did you vote for? And I froze. I was like, I thought we're not supposed to answer this question.
Some people are totally, see, here's the thing. I think it's totally fine to talk about it. If I ask somebody or if somebody asks me, usually when people ask me, I will full blown tell them. I'm not going to launch into some like triad about why and this person sucked, but it's like, oh yeah, I voted for this person. And I think that we've come to a spot in America where like people just get so offended. It's like we live in America, and this is what I told my kids. They came home from a family member's house and was like, oh, so-and-so said they're not voting for our person, they're voting for the other person. And I was like, well, you know what, babe? We live in America. But that's the beauty of our country. Mm-hmm. Everybody is entitled to have their own opinions on, religion, politics, business. And that's what makes us such a beautiful, dynamic place. So did you tell her?
I froze for a minute, and then I did tell her.
Did you guys agree?
We did agree, but it was just so awkward for me because I do feel like in the state that we're in today, even in like, I mean, it depends on your family, of course, but I have heard like within the last like 60 days when the election was going on, I have a friend whose grandma literally stopped talking to her because she found out who she was voting for.
That's so silly.
It's sad. It's very sad, your own grandma. And it's like, but you don't know. You don't know how some people are going to react. So I feel like when it comes to family dynamics,
just don't talk about it.
Let's not. Don't. It's good. It's okay. It's okay not to.
There are so many high trigger issues, and I'm like, can we just like build gingerbread houses, please?
Yeah, and that brings us to the next strategy that we're going to talk about, which is one of my favorite strategies, and it's like the pause and breathe technique. Like
there's power in the pause.
There's power in the pause. And when someone says something like super triggering, or you just feel overwhelmed, like I was so blessed on Thanksgiving that we had it at my house, and I had a lot of people through, and they kind of came in shifts. It was like, okay, my brother and Nicole had stayed like the night.
Open house.
It was like an open house, and then like my mom came, and then my dad came, and then Joe and his wife and their kids came, and I was so excited because there were littles in my house, and I don't have littles that often unless you bring your kids over. But we were inside, and I remembered I had Trent's mini sticks, so I came up and got those, and I was like, oh my God, I knew I should save these for some reason. But then, like, you know, it got a little rambunctious with the kids, and I was like, okay.
And the dogs.
And then Nikki came with Nathan, and she brought her dogs in.
Oh, God.
So, like,
that's why you told me I have 4 dogs and 10 people in
Yes, yeah. So I did. She brought her 2 dogs. So it was a lot, and I will kind of like go sit on my stairs for a minute every once in a while when this happens. Like my friend Nicole,
because you're used to a quiet space.
Yeah, there's just me and Dave here. Like it's silent. You came here this morning. It's like absolutely silent. Like you feel like you need to whisper, like it's church, you know? So I love it. But at the same time, like I'll get to a point where there's so much, like I'll just go sit on my stairs for a second and just like take a breath, and then I'm good. I can come back.
Right.
But it's different from our normal. And once it gets heightened to a certain level, like you said, like something kind of, I don't love the word triggered, but some like
I don't like that word either, but it's just like the best way to explain how
it's like,
you're
okay,
feeling.
now we've kind of flipped into a new zone where it's like, this is fun, but also it feels a little overwhelming. So let me take a minute to kind of bring myself back down and like get grounded, whether it's, I was watching that show on Netflix, it's called A Man on the Inside, and this guy like goes and stays at this like old folks home to like solve a crime. It's cute, it's funny, but the point is the girl that owns it, she will go into her office, and I think I might do this. She'll shut her door and go into her office, and she has headphones like these that she turns on, and she'll lay under her desk with like sounds of a beach, and then she has a picture of her and her mom underneath her desk on the beach, and she just stares at it and listens to the sounds of the beach, you know? And so it's like every once in a while, like that's a great method to do. Like I never thought about doing that at work. Like
I'm gonna come into your office and just see your feet sticking out and be like, well, Trisha's dead. Finally happened. The stress killed her.
So power in the pause. Take a minute. So we got setting intentions and then being okay with taking a pause. When you come back down, everybody's still gonna be doing their thing. It ain't no big deal. They won't
most
even
often
notice.
They usually don't even notice that you're gone. Yeah, I have to sometimes do that when we get a bunch of kids at the house, like when Ryan goes on his hunting trips and I'm like, mom party, and I literally have 8 moms and 25 kids in my house, and sometimes I'm like but at the same time, it's like, this is why I bought the house.
Yeah.
I bought the house so that we could have people over, and I'll clean up tomorrow. I'll mop the floor tomorrow. Nothing is tragic. I usually put like blankets over the furniture. That way, if Cheeto fingers get on the couch, it's not tragic or deadly or anything like that. But that brings me to my next point of self-care. So we talk about this a lot. And honestly, for a long time, I was in the bucket of like, that's just woo-woo bullcrap because we didn't grow up with self-care. It wasn't like a thing.
Right.
And it looks different for everybody. And I still haven't scheduled that massage. So that I said $100,000 Kylie would do. But you need to take a look and find places, whether it's just like a couple minutes on the stairs, like Trisha said, or, a full day of recovery. So like if you're hosting and you have people over, and the next morning you wake up and the house is trashed, like maybe your self-care is, I'm not going to jump right into cleaning up. Like, Ryan's aunt Joanne and Uncle Randy would host Thanksgiving, and his mother Mary makes this pistachio cake that is stupid dumb. It's so good. And so when Mary would arrive with the pistachio cake, Aunt Joanne would take it and cut a giant slice, because her routine was she would just go to bed. Like, the food's put away, she would go to bed. We're not cleaning, we're not picking up, we're not doing anything that doesn't need to be done. And the next morning she would wake up, she would have her coffee, she would have a slice of cake for breakfast, and then she would launch into it. And that was her self-care routine for after Thanksgiving, and just like resetting.
Yeah.
And just making sure she didn't wake up and was like, because that's a terrible feeling.
No, that's why I have to clean the night before. I cannot wake up to no dishes in this.
I will never forget when Ryan and I, when you were living on the Luke Lane house and Ryan and I came over, we were there until like 2 a.m, remember?
Yeah.
And like the dishwasher went off after we had cleaned up after like second supper, and it was like midnight, and you were like, all right, gotta unload the dishwasher.
I have to.
What is she doing?
No, I have to. Like, even Trent's grad party, like, we probably had, I don't know, like probably 400 people through Trent's grad party.
Such a great party.
I had to get every single thing cleaned up before I could go to bed, because for me, self-care is doing that the night before. So when I wake up in the morning, I'm fresh start. Like, yep. I'm good. And I actually said that to Dave like a couple days ago, because he had went to bed before the dishwasher was done, and there was still some like dishes he had used in the process of the time the dishwasher was going. So when I woke up, there were dishes in the sink. And I'm like, babe, if you love me, please make sure there's no dishes. And like, I can't wake up to dishes in the sink. Like, that's just like the one thing for me that like because then I can't leave in the morning. I have to unload the dishwasher. Like, the way my brain works and the fabric of my being is, if the dishwasher is done, I have to unload it and reload it. And in the morning, sometimes like I haven't put that into my time. Like, I have such a, like, this is my routine and it takes exactly this much time. So if there's something additional, like, that just sets me
like
on the wrong thing. But that brings us to the next thing, which is clarifying questions. Now, I love this. This is something I recently started. And I think it's really helpful, especially if you have family members that are very headstrong, right? Like, I have a couple family members that when they say something, they feel like it's gospel, whether they're educated about it or not. And so I've started asking clarifying questions. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Where did you hear that from? Or what makes you feel so strongly about that? Or, you know, because then sometimes they're just like, whatever, you know, but sometimes then it can, maybe you learn.
I read it on Google, so it must be true.
Right. But sometimes you can help educate them so they may feel a little differently, or at least it's not, you know, you're right, I'm wrong, you're right type of deal, or you just walk away feeling mad about it.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to say, like, you know, or like, I love this question you have down here. Can you tell me why this is so important to you? Mm-hmm. It's a way of kind of like flipping the conversation that can kind of diffuse the tension and help them make the other person think about what they're saying. And that's exactly why I like using this, because it helps them to think about it a little more. Like, especially when you say, oh, interesting, where did you get that information?
I use that in business all the time. Like, when people are like, oh, the market's terrible right now. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Why do you feel that way? Because I closed over 30 deals this year. So what is having you know? And a lot of times people are just so hell-bent on what they saw on Facebook and what they saw on Channel 7 News and blah, 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 which when you get in the trenches is not reality. And again, like, there are a lot of hot button issues that can be brought up. And so if you are going to venture forth into those conversations, go with a clear mind and an open mind, and just understand that, like, hey, let's actually have a conversation. I'm going to learn about your perspective. You're going to learn about mine. And we might change our minds, or we might end up just cheersing to the fact that we don't agree. Right. I love that. I love that.
Like, me and you have a lot of those conversations where you'll feel strongly about something.
I feel very strongly about everything.
But I'll be like, well, what if this was the scenario? And you stop and you think about it.
I do.
And that is so respectful to me, because we don't always have to agree. But as long as you'll hear out, like, why I kind of am open and more flexible to that response, then you're like, you may start to change your viewpoint a little bit. Like, you know what? She's right. Like, if I was in this specific instance, that would make me probably feel a little bit differently about this scenario. And then it's helpful because I think you both gain respect for each other because you're being open-minded to hearing. You don't have to agree, but like hear what the other person's saying because it might be something you never thought about. You never thought about putting yourself in this specific situation this way and how you would feel or react about it, right?
Yeah, and even if I like double down on my position, I'm like, no, even in that situation, I feel this way. We're like, all right, cool, let's go get some food.
Yeah. And that's fine because everybody doesn't have to think the same. Like you said, that's what makes this such a wonderful world is that we are all allowed to feel how we feel. Everybody's feelings are valid and that's okay.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to our next tip, which is like having a buddy. I feel like me and you do that a lot in our different spaces and places where it's like, okay, a buddy is going to be a lifesaver, right? Like you're saying like, okay, you know, I told you, like, we got to get back to the gym, right? So I'm like, okay, we got to get back to the gym. You're like, we do. And I'm like, okay, let's put it on the calendar. And you're like, okay. And I'm looking, and I mean, we booked it a couple weeks out from when we started talking about it. But like the holidays, Andy was joking when he wasn't joking. He wasn't joking. He came to the party and he's like, oh, I wish I was hungry. The food looks so good. And I was like, why aren't you hungry? He's like, because I was stress eating. So like, not only are the holidays indulgent, but they're also stressful. And a lot of people cope with their stress with eating, right? Or you're just standing around and you're talking. So having a buddy that you can call up and either, you know, go talk about like going to your therapist or meeting them at the gym or some way, shape, or form, like helping them to get outside and like clear your mind and improve your mood and be able to do that. Like it's so important, especially during this time. And so we booked my birthday and we were just talking about that before we got on. And I'm like, okay, Kylee, like we haven't been to the gym since like, I don't know, super early in the year, like March, April.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Like we're able to like pick that back up, make it a habit and a routine again, and be able to feel good about ourselves. Because everybody at the party was like, you look so good in that dress. And I'm like, I was scared if it was going to zip up or not.
You did look fabulous.
Thank you. But I do need to get back in the gym because when you're not in the gym, like, you know, that's your mental health, right?
Absolutely. So just to wrap up, like just some final tips for reflection. You know, set your intentions for the holidays, set your boundaries, decide how you want things to go. Because even though the holidays are about family and friends and coming together, in the end, you're the one who has to lay in your own bed and be in your own head, right? Yeah. So make sure that you are, you know, very comfortable and confident with how you are pushing forward. Like Trisha said, get a buddy, set some boundaries, write things down, and just take a moment, take care of yourself. There's power in the pause. And also, you know, just make sure that you have someone to talk to, whether it's your spouse or a friend or your mom or someone else. And also just don't talk about politics at the family gathering.
I would also add, like, you know, limiting your social media during this time is really helpful, and let go of perfection. Like I talked about the party, you know, 75 things went wrong that night. And I had to realize, like, it doesn't have to be perfect. Everybody's still having a great time and everything turned out great. And whether we're eating a cake from the restaurant or the one I ordered, it's all cake. So it's fine.
Everybody loves cake. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode. We really loved putting this together for you. Make sure that you subscribe, hit the like button, and share the show. And make sure you come back next week because we drop fresh content every Thursday here on The Elite Life.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today on the Elite Life Podcast with Trish and Kylee. Don't forget to share this episode with a friend so we can keep delivering you more fantastic insights on grit, grace, and growth. Stay connected with us on Instagram and Facebook, where we'll keep the ideas flowing to help you build a life you love and leave a legacy you can be proud of. Until next time.